Good morning, seventh graders. Welcome to your first unit. This is unit number 1, called 1-point perspective. All right, let's go forward to see what we got. Your EQ for this lesson is how do artists accurately depict their surroundings? So the whole point of linear perspective or 1-point perspective is to show your environment accurately, to make it look realistic, to show depth and to show space. So we're going to be thinking about this question as we go through this slide and as you make your project itself. You'll also be responsible for answering this question on your learning log at the end of the unit. So make sure you're thinking about this throughout the unit. So 1-point perspective is a wordy definition. It's a drawing method that shows how things appear to get smaller as they get further away, converging towards a single vantage point in the horizon line. So this is a tough one to see how that happens. You can see how the walls are getting smaller and smaller, but the vanishing point should be right back here somewhere. So all the angles, whether it be the angles of this column here or these large pillars, everything is angling back towards that vanishing point. And good, yes, so this slide shows that. So all the angles are going back to that point. And this artwork is by the artist Raphael. It's called The School of Athens. It was made somewhere between 1509 to 1511 during the Italian Renaissance. Here's another example showing linear perspective during the Renaissance. This is Leonardo da Vinci. It's called The Last Supper, and it was made between 1495 to 1498. And here you have the picture of Jesus and his disciples, and then you have the breakdown of all the vanishing point, the horizon line, and how all the angles are going back into this space. Back then, during the Renaissance, Christianity was at its height, so a lot of these artworks are of that religion. All right, so their second vocab word is horizon line. So your first step of any linear perspective drawing is to create a horizon line, and that's a line that represents the viewer's eye level or to show where the sky meets the ground. So you have the sky, here you have the ground, everything below that line. And the question we want to ask ourselves to really understand horizon line is how can changing the placement of the horizon line affect the viewer's understanding of space? So here we have the horizon line in the middle. Here you have it down at the bottom. Here you have it higher up. So as higher up, it looks more like you're looking at it from an aerial vantage point, looking down on it. So the more you raise it, the more it looks like you're looking down. The more you lower the horizon line, the more it looks like you're looking up at it, and right here is right at the middle. So depth is the distance from near to far. That's the whole concept of linear perspective, is to create the illusion of depth. So here, this would be near, the front of this train track, and then far would be further back. It's getting further away back here. So the distance from near to far, and how does the vanishing point help create a sense of depth to the viewer? To answer that question, all you have to do is look at this picture, and you can see that by angling the lines to that point, it forces the angles to get smaller and the spaces of the lines get smaller and smaller. So the vanishing point basically makes objects smaller to make it look like they're going back into depth. Because as things are further from view, from what we see, they get smaller and smaller. The things closest to us are largest, the things further away are smaller. Vanishing point is the place where all lines converge. We've already talked about this a couple times, but that's the formal definition. So this one point is where all those lines are meeting or converging. And why is depth important to a viewer's understanding of space? Because, as I mentioned before, in space, things get smaller as they go back into space. So you have to have depth to make the space realistic. Otherwise, everything would be just right in front of our face. Space is a distance or area between things, that's a basic definition. All art has a space in some way, but specifically in this project, we're using space to create depth, to make that space show objects larger in the front and smaller in the back. So how does 1-point perspective alter the spaces between objects? Well, for example, if we were standing right in front of these two windows and looking at them, the space between them would be larger. So linear perspective shortens the amount of space between objects. Foreground is the front space of an artwork, so everything in the front of your project is the foreground. And then, of course, the middle ground in the middle and the background in the back. Why does the foreground need to include the highest level of detail? Well, that's simply because the things closest to us have the most detail because we can see them the best. For the same reason that things get smaller in the distance and we can't see it as well, we also can't see the detail that ties along with it. The background is the backspace of an artwork, which I already mentioned a second ago. The background that shows what's in the back. Pretty self-explanatory. And this is basically the last question in reverse. Why do objects become less detailed as they get closer to the background? Like I already said, because it's further away and we can't see them as well. Not only do they get smaller, but they become less detailed. Middle ground is the middle space, which is, well, the formal definition is the space between the background and the foreground. And I believe this is our last slide here. The question that I pose is, how can the space in the middle ground create a focal area for the viewer? Well, if the stuff in the background is getting smaller in the distance, stuff in the foreground's the largest and in your face, the middle ground can be an area to have other objects and other things, kind of fill the scene to bring life to the scene. So that's how it can help create a focal area for the artist to look at. And that's the end of the slide. I look forward to seeing your projects and your responses. Bye, guys.